The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt is one of the greatest games ever made. Developed by CD Projekt Red and released in 2015, The Witcher 3 garnered near-universal praise for its ambitious storytelling and immersive setting. The game's success propelled the somewhat niche franchise into the mainstream. In this long and sprawling adventure, The Witcher 3 concludes Geralt's journey satisfyingly, and that's not even getting into the awesome combat, graphics, characters, lore, DLC, and everything else along the same lines. There aren't many games that feel quite as fresh as CD Projekt Red's masterpiece, but fortunately for us, there are still numerous games that scratch a similar itch. Welcome to Game Rant, everyone. My name is Geoffrey. Let's take a look at 10 of the best action RPGs to play if you're a fan of The Witcher 3. Coming in at number 10, we have Elden Ring. Elden Ring has taken the gaming world by storm in a way that the popular but still niche Dark Souls games never quite managed. Set in a vast world that demands to be explored, Elden Ring mostly leaves players to their own devices as they traverse the unknown in search of the Great Runes. Unsurprisingly, this journey proves to be extremely difficult. Honestly, Elden Ring's combat, lore, presentation, and pacing are not all that similar to The Witcher 3. From Software's game is still very much its own beast. That said, when it comes to action open-world RPGs, both releases are game changers and deliver experiences that are hard to top. And coming in at number 9, we have Kingdoms of Amalur: Re-Reckoning. Kingdoms of Amalur excels in different areas than The Witcher 3. Its story is a bit uninspired and doesn't become anything more than just serviceable. Conversely, the game's combat is smooth, fast-paced, flexible, and creative. The protagonist lacks Geralt's personality. However, Kingdom of Amalur's customization options provide players with plenty of room to create their own heroes. The Witcher 3 and Kingdoms of Amalur both take place in rich fantasy settings that are visually captivating, although the latter's world is far more colorful than the former. For those seeking an action-heavy RPG, this game is the way to go, either in the form of the OG release or the Re-Reckoning visually enhanced upgrade. And next up at number 8, we have GreedFall. Placing the player in the boots of a noble emissary exploring a mostly undeveloped island, GreedFall offers a large and dynamic map to uncover. The third-person view that mixes a nice range of melee weapons and firearms gives this ARPG a unique feel that will resonate well with fans of The Witcher games. There are a ton of cool original monsters to meet and slay, though the vibrant natural world offers more than just combat. Players can romance various companions along the way, build diplomatic relations with powerful politicians, and bring peace to the divided factions crowding the island. Coming in at number 7 is Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines might seem somewhat antiquated in this day and age, but the action RPG was a game changer way back in 2004. Prior to The Witcher 3, Troika's project helped set the standard for writing in video games, and the range of choices the RPG provides players is still impressive nearly and over 2 decades later. Narratively, Bloodlines is among the genre's greatest representatives, and time has done nothing to change that perspective. Provided someone goes into the 2004 release with reasonable expectations, considering its age, they will find one of the best games like The Witcher 3, especially if you happen to play the excellent Witcher Blood and Wine DLC, which features plenty of vampire shenanigans and hijinks just like you will find in Bloodlines. And next up at the number 6 spot is Grim Dawn. Grim Dawn is an isometric action RPG in the style of something like Diablo or Titan Quest. Therefore, any person contemplating whether they should pick up this game should be aware that it plays nothing like The Witcher 3, at least in terms of its perspective. Like most entries in this subgenre, Grim Dawn is primarily loot-driven, and the game doesn't hold back on drops. Even though it is very much a different type of beast from CD Projekt Red's RPG, Grim Dawn also envisions a dark fantasy world that has a more grounded aesthetic compared to other similar games. While not the focus, the game's story is pretty good as well, taking place in a world ravished by a war that left humanity on the brink of annihilation. Don't sleep on this one if you haven't had the chance to check it out yet. And next up at number 5 is Dragon's Dogma: Dark Arisen. Capcom's Dragon's Dogma is fortunately and finally receiving a sequel at some point in the future, something that has been a long time coming. Slightly underrated at the time of its release, Dragon's Dogma gradually garnered a cult following, particularly once the Dark Arisen expansion hit the scene. In some ways, Capcom's game is the inverse of The Witcher 3, since it excels in combat while not offering too much story excitement. Dragon's Dogma unleashes players in a dark fantasy world filled with imaginative and horrifying monsters, most of which pack quite the punch. Even though its map is not especially large, the game makes Gransys seem bigger than it really is by limiting fast travel and cramming a lot of content into a small space. At number 4, we have Mass Effect 2. When it comes to games that are similar to The Witcher 3, it goes without saying that most BioWare games from their golden age are a great fit. Mass Effect 2 is one such game that is a must-play for anyone who is invested in the story of The Witcher 3. While BioWare games tend to focus more on party interactions, individual character stories and the like, there will still be plenty of similarities between Mass Effect 2 and The Witcher 3 to satiate any person's role-playing urges. The biggest difference between both these games, I guess obviously, is their setting of course, with one leaning into fantasy and the other, in the case of Mass Effect, sci-fi. And at the number 3 spot we have Bloodborne. The Witcher 3 combat is awesome, and any player who wishes to enjoy a tighter and more challenging version of this combat should definitely check out Bloodborne. The fast-paced nature of the game's combat will definitely feel right at home with the battles in The Witcher 3, and that's not the only selling point of Bloodborne, far from it. The beautiful gothic world of this game has a number of Lovecraftian elements that make the levels of Bloodborne equally haunting and engrossing to explore. At number 2 is Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor. High fantasy settings are a dime a dozen in video games, and it can be quite challenging to select a game that does justice to its setting. Thankfully, Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor manages to evade this problem since its setting is already established, and it's as legendary as can be. It certainly helps that the game is extremely fun to play, with the visceral combat being an absolute blast in every sense of the word. People who play Shadow of Mordor would definitely have an extremely positive and enjoyable experience indeed. And at the number 1 spot is The Witcher 2: Assassins of Kings. Typically, it goes without saying that someone should start with the first rather than the last chapter in a trilogy, but The Witcher is an exception. The third entry served as this universe's introductory point for a lot of people, and the game's popularity far eclipses its predecessors. Although they do tell one ongoing story, CD Projekt Red succeeded in making The Witcher 3 accessible as a standalone experience. As such, even people who adored the game might not feel tempted to revisit the previous entries. Even though its writing is fantastic, 2007's The Witcher's gameplay is polarizing and completely different from anything that came after it. Fortunately, the same cannot be said for The Witcher 2: Assassins of Kings, which incorporates many of the same ideas as its successor. While consisting of separate zones rather than a continuous open world, the RPG still contains its share of exploration and side quests, and the latter are decent in their own right. The combat system is also pretty similar to The Witcher 3, which means people will either love or hate it. More importantly, Assassins of Kings tells a great story all around. And there we have it, 10 of the very best action RPGs to play if you happen to enjoy The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. Thank you so much for watching this video from Game Rant. Have a truly wonderful and happy day. See you in the next video. Bye bye.